This week on Jerusalem Dateline, U.S. Ambassador to the UN wows Israeli leaders.
With your support, we see the beginning of a new era.
Plus, counting the human cost 50 years after the Six-Day War.
How did you manage to carry on after your husband died?
And a spectacular look at the Dead Sea, one of the wonders of the world. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley has surprised a lot of people with her bold defense of the Jewish state. She paid her first visit to Israel as the U.S. Ambassador to the UN and declared the time of bullying Israel at the UN is over.
Welcome. How are you? It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
UN Ambassador Nikki Haley found Israeli leaders eager to thank her for the new role she's playing.
With your support, we see the beginning of a new era. Israel is no longer alone in the United Nations. Israel is no longer the United Nations punching bag.
I feel somewhat guilty because all I did at the United Nations was tell the truth. And I have never taken kindly to bullies, and the UN has bullied Israel for a very long time. And we're not going to let that happen anymore. It is a new day for Israel in the United Nations.
Part of that new day includes Haley's stern threat to pull the U.S. out of the UN Human Rights Council, a group she called a forum for politics, hypocrisy, and evasion.
It is essential that this council address its chronic anti-Israel bias if it is to have any credibility.
I think Israel sees Nikki Haley's visit here as a real positive.
Many, like former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, who came as the keynote speaker for the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, see Haley as one of the new Trump administration's brightest lights.
She is marvelous, and I think everyone was surprised how bold and forthright and clear. She has so much clarity on the issue of Israel and the United States' relationship with Israel. And as the United States ambassador, she's announcing to the world that the United States of America has Israel's back.
Haley flew to Israel's southern border next to the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. She examined a tunnel once used by Hamas to infiltrate Israel and met with civilians who live on the front lines. It's likely the visit gives Haley more evidence of the threats facing Israel and its people. The United States Senate voted 90-0 on a resolution honoring the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem during the 1967 Six-Day War. The resolution also calls on the President and all U.S. officials to abide by a 1995 law that urged then-President Bill Clinton to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. White House officials say it's only a matter of when, not if, the president follows through on his campaign promise. You heard in our story on Nikki Haley from former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. She came to Jerusalem to participate in the first annual Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. Overlooking Jerusalem, we asked Bachmann about the significance of the Six-Day War and the reunification of the city 50 years ago. Well, Michelle, it's a joy to be back with you here in Jerusalem Dateline.
Isn't it great, especially being here?
Yeah.
I'm so pleased to be with you.
What do you think of the view?
I think that you nailed it. Yeah, no, this is great. This is the best view that you could possibly have.
Yeah.
What a privilege.
Well, it's been 50 years since Jerusalem's been reunified by the IDF. So do you see what happened 50 years ago as like a watershed in prophetic history?
Oh, there's no question it's a watershed. I think, again, think of, for millennia, the Jews have been displaced out of their own land. For millennia, Jews had no access to their most sacred site, which was the Western Wall in Jerusalem. I went to the wall myself twice yesterday because I didn't want to miss the blessing of being there for that extraordinary, miraculous event that happened 50 years ago, the reunification of Jerusalem. It was foretold in the scriptures. We knew it from Zechariah, we knew it from Ezekiel, we knew it from Jeremiah, it happened within our lifetimes, this miracle, this fulfillment of the reunification. Jerusalem is the epicenter of the world in God's view. And the Lord, in his scripture, stated very clearly that the Jews would one day come back to their own land, the same people, the same language, serving the same God. And miraculously, they came back and established the modern Jewish state in 1948, but that wasn't all. God said he was going to perform a new covenant with Jerusalem to give them a new heart, which he has done. And also he said he was going to bring Jerusalem back, reunified, which he did. And he was going to reunify Judea and Israel. All of that has been accomplished within our lifetime. So that tells us on God's prophetic clock, things are clicking right along here. And so that's why it's very important, I think I'm speaking now as a believer in Jesus Christ, that we keep our oil lamps filled, that we keep in tune with the Lord's Holy Spirit, and that we keep our wicks trimmed. Oil lamps filled, wicks trimmed, so that we are ready for his soon and coming arrival again.
You were at the Jerusalem prayer breakfast yesterday, and you, I wouldn't say you spoke, but you actually just prayed. How does Jerusalem fit in God's plan?
Yeah, I was the keynote speaker yesterday, and the Lord led me just to take my entire slotted time to be in prayer and do serious spiritual warfare on behalf of the Jewish state and on behalf of Jerusalem. I think that the event was extremely important for Israel because we were here to benefit the Jewish state, to pray for them, and to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and also to remember that millions of Jews across the millennia who were persecuted and killed simply because of their faith, they longed for this day. They longed for the day when Jerusalem would be reunified and when Jerusalem would have peace. And just like we as believers pray for the peace of Jerusalem, Jews from millennia past have also prayed for the peace of Jerusalem. We have seen a realization of that prayer just in the reunification of Israel. Today, Israel is more prosperous and more at peace than it's ever been. Is it still under attack? You bet it's still under attack. Do they still need the help and backing and support of the United States? Absolutely, they need the backing and support. But they also have more peace and more prosperity and more security than they've ever had. But at the same time, we recognize the vigilance that we need to have to keep them safe.
Coming up, a look at those who paid the highest price during the Six-Day War.
We were friends 7 years. He was my boyfriend, my family, my lover, and my husband.
"50 years ago this month, Israel fought and won the Six-Day War. It started on a Sunday, June 5th, and by the following Sabbath, it was finished, and Israel could take a rest. But as we look at the miracle of the 1967 Six-Day War, it's also important to look at the human cost. For the young country, it was an epic turning point. But for many of its people, this victory cost them nearly everything. CBN's Scott Ross has that story.
Who's this?
This is Yaron. This is my son. And this is me.
Look, the admiration on his face. You're a beautiful lady.
I thought, yes.
Yes.
Even now.
In 1967, Ruth Elul was a 27-year-old mother of two when her husband, Yekutiel Novik, was killed in the Six-Day War.
Yaron was 4 years old and Orit was 1 year old.
So was the 4-year-old able to understand that his father was dead? Did he ask for his father?
He was saying to me, "We, Israel, we won the war over the Arabs, and the Arabs killed my father."
At the end of the war, Ruth didn't know initially what had happened to her husband. While she thought to herself, no news is good news, she went from army camp to camp and finally found the truth.
I said to myself this sentence, "I will not let this rule over me."
How did you manage to carry on after your husband died? How did you?
I don't know. Until 10 years ago, I can't weep. I don't weep.
You don't weep?
No.
Ruth married again and had a third child, but later divorced. For 40 years, she told me she blamed her deceased husband for everything that went wrong in her life. Then just 10 years ago, She read the army report of what had happened to him. How did he die?
בדרך חזרה מהטנק,
When he came back from fixing the tank, he was hit by mortar fire, and he asked the medics to actually evacuate his other friends before him, and that's how he died.
Did you eventually come to a place where you could forgive your husband?
after 40 years.
Why?
Why? Because I read the file, and when I read the file, I understand that it's not his blame. That he
Really?
wants to live, but he can't live.
We're approaching the anniversary of the 50th year of the Six-Day War. Was it worth it? No.
Not to me. Look, I love my country.
Yes.
I love it very much. One of the most things that I was afraid of, that my children will leave the country. All of them are here. I really like Israel, really, really love it, but the price is too much.
What about now?
Now I'm happy with what I have.
Your heart's no longer broken.
It's broken.
Still broken.
All of us, all the widows of the war, we are saying, once a widow, always a widow.
God cares for the widows and the orphans. Simona Ziv Ma'ar was even younger, just 20 years old, when she became a war widow.
I met my husband when I was 13 and a half. He took me to school. We were friends 7 years. He was my boyfriend, my family, my lover, and my husband.
Simona and Ruth are just two of 318 widows and more than 600 orphans from the Six-Day War. How long were you married?
4 months, then the war broke out, and that's it.
What happened?
He was killed on the Golan Heights on the 6th day of the war, on the last day. He was seriously wounded, and because the path was full of tanks, he died before they could get him down. And then the war started in my life.
Simona has more than 800 clowns in her home, a testimony to her choice to be happy despite her loss. How did you go on after your husband died? God took care of you?
God gave me strength.
And she needed that strength because shortly after Herzl died, her father and mother soon followed, leaving her all alone. 3 years later, she remarried and had 2 sons, but the marriage didn't last. Your husband had died, both parents had died. So did this make you angry with God?
No, he wasn't guilty. That's the way life is. I don't know God. I can't argue with him. He decided. He did it. I can't say anything to him.
Did you find any comfort in the fact that Israel won the war, but you lost your husband?
I lost my other life completely because I had a very talented husband. He was an amazing man. I'm certain life would have been completely different. It is a victory for the country, but my loss. He was everything for me.
Both Ruth and Simona are part of the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, Widows and Orphans organization that helps those who have suffered their same trauma. Currently, some 8,000 men, women, and children have lost loved ones in the IDF or security forces. Can you help them?
We help each other. We don't have to agree with the opinion. They have their opinion, I have my opinion. It's okay, but we speak the same language. We understand each other.
What do you have to say to people who have experienced the kind of grief you have?
What happened to me happened. Life is beautiful. Not always, but you need to live and to believe the faith. Some people build something good, some less good, some better. It's a part of life. I'm an example of this.
Scott Ross for CBN News in Tel Aviv.
Up next, hear what Israel's had to say about CBN's In Our Hands docudrama.
It was amazing to feel a part of it.
Here in Jerusalem, the movie premiered in its hometown at a gala event. Here's a look at how Israelis received the film. The film marks 50 years since Israel's victory in the 1967 Six-Day War.
One of the guiding verses for me for this whole project is Psalm 126. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. It's with great joy I say to you, the Lord has done great things for you.
The film follows the life of several paratroopers as they fought critical battles to reunite the city under Jewish sovereignty for the first time in 2,000 years. They attended the event and honored the film's writer and director, Aaron Zimmerman.
I want to tell to all of you that she does a wonderful work.
Very excited. It brought me back to the moment when we broke through the Lion's Gate.
My biggest fear was somebody saying, well, that wasn't really right, or it didn't really happen like that. And so to get the seal of approval from all 4 of our paratroopers who were here tonight was an amazing blessing for me.
The film has been a big hit in the U.S., but how did it play in Israel?
As an Israeli, I must say that I have not seen for a very long time such a great expression of a true storytelling of what really happened here.
It was really inspirational and really amazing to be able to see, especially the old original footage.
It gave you a real sense of how the war was. What a testimonial to Israel.
What I didn't expect was also the feeling that the soldiers have after losing their comrades and that mourning that they go through, but the film ended with such a high note of Zechariah 8.
The Israeli actors felt honored to be a part of the film.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It was very, very pro-Israel.
It was amazing to feel a part of it.
Some Israelis were surprised that Christians would make such a film to honor Israel.
It's heartwarming. We have friends who care.
Yes, I've just learned about it, that Christians love Israel. It was very surprising, a good surprise.
You just heard how Israelis enjoyed the movie. Now, how would you say movie in Hebrew? Here's a look at one of our weekly features on social media. It's called Hebrew Word Wednesday.
This week's Hebrew Word Wednesday is Seret. Seret is a movie. This week, CBN's docudrama Seret movie, In Our Hands, The Battle for Jerusalem, debuted in its hometown, Jerusalem. The film marks the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War and Israel's reuniting of Jerusalem. 4 of the actual paratroopers, as well as the actors who were in CBN's Seret, also were able to attend the premiere.
Well, after the success at the box office in the United States, I was still nervous tonight as to how is this audience, a Jewish audience, how are they going to receive the film? And to get a standing ovation from them, to have the outpouring of thanks from the paratroopers who were part of the film, part of the battle. It was a night to remember, and it was a great way to celebrate my birthday.
Coming up, take a rare boat ride with us on one of Israel's natural wonders, the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is a natural wonder, but this unique body of water is getting smaller. We want to take you on an amazing boat ride on the Dead Sea and show you why some are speaking out about this treasure.
There is a microorganism that lives in the fresh water, surrounded with salt water. In order to keep his habitat, he builds some kind of micronic sleeve, and around it builds up the chimney.
In the past over a year now, I've been documenting this one-of-a-kind place like never before, going on this boat ride over a period of time and documenting the beauty the magic of this place with the purpose to educate the next generation of this one-of-a-kind place, but also showing the dramatic changes that this place has been taking.
I want to see the Dead Sea restored, and to do that, actually what the government needs to do is, one, is to fill in the Sea of Galilee with distilled water to the upper level where they can open the dam and fill in the River of Jordan. And the second part is the Channel of Seas, actually to bring water from the Red Sea to the south part of the Dead Sea and build the huge distill plants that will give water to Jordan, so we don't have to give them from the Jordan River. The only way that we can save the Dead Sea is if we always keep it up on the news. We don't let it sink down, we don't let it disappear because there is something else that looks more important. And this is what each and every one of us can do to help the Dead Sea.
It's very rare to be on a boat on the Dead Sea, and that's a great way to see the wonder of this amazing body of water. Remember, because of the salt and mineral content, you can't sink in the Dead Sea. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.